Crimewave, it's 100% true that from failing, we learned a tremendous amount. There's a part of me that's very glad that the movie kind of just disappeared. It just vanished for 15 years.
I haven't seen you here before. I like that in a woman.
We learned from Evil Dead how to succeed. We learned from Crimewave how to fail.
You're cute.
Keep talking, baby. Maybe you'll tell me something I don't already know.
Well, when Evil Dead came along, it was being our first feature film. We were very concerned about getting investors their money back, and we had done mostly comedies in our little short movies, and that was something that we loved very much, but the idea of doing a comedy it didn't seem like it was possible. You had to have talented comedians, named comedians or whatever, and with a horror movie, you didn't have to have anybody. You could have a bunch of no-name actors, and so I think we felt pressured to just succeed. So the first Evil Dead was really a way to get our foot in the door, and because it was successful, I think we were more emboldened to go, hey, let's make a movie more of what our real sensibilities are, which, you know, became the ill-fated Crimewave. We had met the Coen brothers at that point, and so Joel and Ethan Coen. Joel was the assistant editor of Evil Dead, and Ethan was working as I believe, a statistical analyst at Macy's. Go figure. And so in talking to them, I think Sam pitched this idea to them, and so that's why they're credited as the writers. But I think we just wanted to do something that was completely different. And if you look at it, Crimewave has zero blood. The bad guy gets a fork in his nose at one point, and you see 4 little red dots. That's it. There's no blood in the movie. It's a comedy. It's a musical number. I mean, it was trying to be, I think, a really wacky, fun adventure that went horribly wrong.
Hey, if it's so funny, why don't you share it with the rest of us?
We knew that there would be bigger challenges making a bigger movie, but good God, I mean, what is a Teamster? What is a Teamster? I mean, how does a Teamster tell a bedtime story? Once upon a time and a half. We didn't know about overtime. We didn't know about the Screen Actors Guild. None of us were in the Screen Actors Guild on Evil Dead. You've got the Directors Guild. Sam was not in the guild. You've got, Electricians Guild, Sound Guilds. This is Detroit. This is a union town. And so we had to learn about forced call. Like if you brought an actor back earlier than 12 hours, which to us was like, why wouldn't you? You just get the actor when you need him. God forbid we got to sign, and then you got to sign out all the timesheets and guys clocking in and out. I was like, this was really weird. And the scope of it got big enough that it got out of hand. And it really was, if you watch the movie, it's a combination of trained union professionals, a bigger budget, but we still work with a lot of people that we knew. So we were trying to cram all of our stuff into this Hollywood movie. The casting was a much different process because now we were pressured to use, name actors. And it was a situation where I could not star in the movie. Evil Dead was just assumed, okay, Bruce, you're in it. You're the guy. I didn't audition for Evil Dead. So I did a screen test for Crimewave. I'm like, I'm screen testing for my own movie? I'm one of the producers. What's happening here? So I did a big screen test. They shot it in 16 millimeter, and the word came down, Bruce Campbell is not going to star in this movie. That to me was the first indication. I went, wow, we're not in Kansas anymore, where they shot us down on one of the biggest things that we took for granted. So it was a huge eye-opening experience, and it was not a good one. I think Crimewave was over our head. But you got to start somewhere, I guess. Sam always has big ideas. He has from the very first day. We on Evil Dead, we would take 12 hours to get one shot. We never thought that was weird. There was no perspective. Okay, that shot was hard. It took us 12 hours to get one shot. Sam would have been fired under any other scenario if he wasn't, one of the general partners of that, because that's just how he works. We didn't know any different, and the shots he was getting were very difficult. Well, now on Crimewave, he had shots in that thing that are not in the finished movie. There are little bits in there from a shot that started outside of a skylight. You're above a building, and you're looking at a skylight with a little wisp of smoke coming out, and you track in, and you go through that skylight. Then you see a guy at a desk down below, and you're above him the whole time. You're coming down all the way in to his hand, and he's tapping a cigarette on a case. And you follow this whole scenario. He makes a phone call, and it goes all the way back up through the skylight. The skylight closes. I mean, it's the most beautiful shot you've ever seen. It was cut into 100 million pieces.
Center City Exterminators. Trent? You there?
We started to cut the movie. Kathy Weaver was our choice, and she was editing it. And it took a while. It just started to take a long time, and it wasn't going as fast as anybody thought. Another thing is, once we screened it, I think there was a general feeling that we needed a bookend, something. So in the movie, the beginning of the movie and the end of the movie are bookends, which filmed to tie it all together. So that was an additional 4 days of shooting pickups of nuns trying to come in and save the day, and him telling the story. It gave them a vehicle to flash back on the story rather than tell it in a linear fashion, which I think allowed us to keep it short, because this movie's, I think, 83 minutes, something like that. It's pretty short. But, so we screened it, not for an audience or anything, just for the executives, and the feedback came back pretty negative. It got to the point where they wanted to recut the movie with a new editor, Michael Kelly, and so they did, And we realized at that point, and they were going to take it from Detroit. It was all Detroit based. We were editing in Detroit. We had everything set up there. This is where we lived. We didn't live anywhere else. We lived in Detroit. So now they said, we're coming to L.A. We're moving everything back to L.A. And we were like,
could you die?
And there were 3 partners, myself, Sam Raimi, and Rob Tappert. And we sat in the office. They said, we're going to pay for 2 of you to come out. And I said, you're going to pay for 2 of us. How many people do you see sitting in front of you? There's 3 of us. And it set off a tirade. There was an executive who had held back all of his rage and anger at us for apparently months, and now could just let it go.
Get away from that fucking window!
He started out by saying, look, asshole. And then he just went from there. And by the end of it, what can you say? It was a really interesting first experience of how nasty Hollywood and business in general can get. Because obviously this guy was feeling the heat from all of his bosses. How did this get away, is what they probably asked him. How did this happen? So I just remember at the end of it, we just said, pay for whoever you want. We're all coming. We're all going to be here. This is our movie. You can't get rid of us. So we took whatever money they gave us, and we just moved out here and stayed here. And the one thing that we did learn, it was a great lesson, and to this day, all of us who worked on the movie have what we call a Crimewave Meter. That if it starts to go boop, 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 you start to know this project, this is bad. My Crimewave Meter is going off. There's either something about the production that's wrong, or the script that's wrong, the setup. Something is going to go horribly wrong. Your spider senses are tingling. So it's the Crimewave Meter. So I'm really grateful to get that out of it, to have gone through all of this. What it makes you realize is that if you don't give up, they can't get rid of you. It's harder for them to get rid of you. They have to physically change the locks on the editing room door. So we never left. We stayed in there. We tormented them about editing and this and that. And we stayed through all the posts. We didn't walk away from it. We didn't turn our back on it. But it was pretty disheartening. And in my mind, I really went, if this is Hollywood, I don't want any part of it. I don't want any part of it. I'm going to go back to Michigan, raise $12, make crappy low-budget movies for the rest of my life because this is horse shit. You know, I mean, this was just as bad as we did making the movie. We felt the same way about the way we were treated. It was kind of at the very end of it. There's a whole new executive who now is the head of a massive major company in Hollywood. Finally said, guys, I understand you had a rough time of it. I apologize for anything that went down. We probably, shouldn't have done this movie. So we're like, okay, yeah, thanks. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. So, but it made us tougher. We came out of it like adults. I think we went into it still as goofy, fun-loving filmmakers, and we came out of it men.
Who were those guys anyway?
The final straw of all of this is that after going through this, going over budget, people don't seem to like it. They just didn't put it out. It was released literally in Alaska and Kansas because they had to qualify for an HBO deal. They had sold it to HBO, and HBO said, well, you have to have some kind of theatrical release according to our contract. So they literally showed it in Kansas and Alaska. And I'm like, who's going to see it in Kansas and Alaska? So we had one good screening of the movie. It was at a Seattle Film Festival. And the guy who came out before it said, look, ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you something. I wish we had this guy. We should have filmed him in front of the movie and put it in front of the movie. Because the guy came out and he goes, folks, you're about to watch a very silly movie.
Ow! I am captain of this elevator, and we are stopping at every floor.
So put your silly hat on. So that's what I would say to anybody who watches this movie. Put your silly hat on and you'll be fine. Because if you're not wearing your silly hat, it's a movie that you may or may not like. Look, I'm glad that all these years later, it's being, slowly resurrected, and so people can see a new, cleaned up version of it. So I'm always glad from a preservation standpoint. We're proud of that because we put our blood into that movie, and we failed. And I think it's a critical lesson for anybody in the entertainment business or business in general. It was a really good wake-up call, and I hope that people get some enjoyment out of the movie because, Sam's an incredibly inventive director. There are some really neat things in here cinematically. And I think there's some good gags. There's some good childhood humor that we still stuck in there and hid in there.
We'll have a scotch on the sofa.
So we always just appreciate the hardship of it. And I'd go back over the years to work on a commercial in Detroit or go back for a screening or a movie or to see somebody and run into the old crew members and even Teamsters. Even these tough, hardened Teamsters were like, oh, Crimewave, oh, that was a bitch. Oh, everybody shuddered at that movie. The actors were shuddering. We were shuddering. Everybody shudders when they think of that movie, but it's good for you.